Hello fellow tarot enthusiasts, this is my second Soul Tarot workshop for you guys. I hope that you enjoyed the first one, I hope you got a lot out of it, and I hope that your tarot journals were absolutely brimming with ideas and that you feel that you've gone further along on your journey since then. I'm planning on teaching 4 or 5 of these workshops and talking about different things that you can do to really bond with your deck from your heart space, from your soul, really get connected with what tarot means for you as a tool, whether you're reading the cards for yourself or whether you're reading for others, whether you plan on reading for others. So that's really what it's intended to be about. What you will need to go through the workshop is just a pen and a piece of paper, whether it's your journal or a notebook, and obviously use of the pause button because it's a very long piece of footage and it's unedited, so you're going to need to kind of skip back and forth and write down different things that you might want to try and go through. I'm going to be doing this workshop with the aid of my trusty cream soda. I know it's bad for me. Please don't comment below telling me not to drink it. It's a little guilty pleasure of mine. I have to have a little bit of something to wet my whistle if I'm going to talk for an hour straight. Okay, the first thing that I want to suggest we do with this Soul Tarot workshop is to really start thinking about your intentions, because this is your journey and you are the best person to be able to gauge and judge where you are at this point on your tarot journey, and also to be able to plan and prepare for where you eventually want to end up and what your goals are in that sense. So firstly, I want to ask you to think about what your goals are for this lesson, what your intentions are for this Soul Tarot workshop that you're going through with me now. What would you like to feel as though you've achieved upon completing this workshop? What kind of new techniques do you want to kind of put into place? Is it about confidence? Is it about coming up with new practices and ideas that you hadn't thought of? Do you kind of want to branch out with certain specific cards and you're hoping that the Soul Tarot workshop will help you to get to the next level with certain cards that you're having difficulties with? Think about what it is that you have in mind when you watch workshops like this, or when you watch my free lessons, or when you read your tarot books. Think about this lesson specifically, but also think about where you are looking to go with tarot as a seeker, as a student. And also, if you read tarot for other people, as a reader, what are your intentions? What are your goals? Take a snapshot of where you are now on your journey, and then start really branching out. Think about your short-term goals and your short-term intentions. Write down, for example, what you might want to succeed with in the next month. It's the beginning of the month now, so if you're watching this in August when I'm uploading it, it's the beginning of the month now, so it might be a really good time to start thinking about laying some new foundations or about pushing yourself onto that next level. Think about the coming 3 months. Think about exactly where it is that you'd like to be. Of course, everything is subject to change when we're learning something, and we need to be flexible. We need to kind of yield to the changing tide of how our connection with whatever we're learning is going. Nothing can be solid and nothing can be at a standstill. When you're learning something and when you're a student, everything is constantly in flux. So you need to kind of make amends for that. You need to make your peace with that. However, it's very useful to have an understanding of where you want to go in your short-term future as a student and as a reader, if you are also a reader for others. And think about your long-term plans with tarot as well. Think about where you are now and where you would like to be perhaps in the next 5 years. Think about how much that has changed since you first picked up a deck. What were your intentions and goals when you first became interested in tarot? Why did you pick up a deck in the first place? And why have you kept at it for as long as you have? Because I know if you're watching the Soul Tarot workshop, then you must be kind of either at the end of your beginning stage or your intermediate to advanced, because it's kind of quite sticky, complex stuff. So congratulate yourself for however far you've come, and start really embracing your intentions and celebrating and honouring your goals and using them to really spur you on and get you moving forward with your tarot journey. So just stop and have a little think and a write about your intentions with following the workshop and your intentions with regard to the long-term and short-term future of your tarot journey. I think it's really useful to do that. I think it's something that we don't do enough when we're on a journey of learning. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about the bardic technique with this workshop. The bardic technique in tarot is the storytelling technique. And I suppose the reason that we call it the bardic technique would have something to do with the druids and how the bards were traditionally the storytellers and the entertainers and the music makers and the dreamers of the dreams. Actually, that would be the Ovids. But I just had to go for the Willy Wonka quotation there. The bardic technique, the storytelling technique in tarot, is where we basically use the tarot cards to help us formulate a story. and we journey through that story as the cards are turned over, and the idea of where it's placed, what the setting is, who the characters are, and what the plot line is unfolds. The bardic technique is very useful for two reasons. The first reason I think it's very useful is that symbology and the dense symbolic language of things like myths and fairy tales and stories around the campfire, etc., can be very useful in terms of healing for our own lives and in terms of taking a look at where we are and where we want to go. When you read a mythological tale, even when you're reading a modern day book of fiction, and you're slowly kind of unraveling the characters and the storyline and everything, you very often start relating the things that you're reading to your own life, and you can see how everything relates to your own psyche, and you start to have different perceptions and different feelings about what's unfolding, and very often you learn something about yourself. So that's really the first reason that the bardic technique is very useful in tarot. And over on my Etsy shop I have a purchase option there called the Storybook Tarot Reading. Until recently it was called the Rabbit Hole Reading, but it's now called the Storybook Tarot Reading, so that I can get things kind of more clear and simple for those who may wish to purchase it. And that is basically a purchase that utilises the bardic technique in tarot. So what I will do is I will use the cards to invent a story, and I will spin that story and weave that story around the central character, and the central character is the client. The central character is the person coming for the reading. And by the end, what they will have is they will have a very dense and rich story which is set in a certain place, and they'll come across certain characters and certain things will happen, certain events will unfold. And as a result, they'll be able to use the story that's been formulated from the cards to think about their own life, and to use the symbology that's come up as an opportunity to assess and explore their own situation. So that's how I use it. The second thing that it's very useful for is writing fiction. That's a very kind of straightforward way in which it's obviously useful to use the bardic technique. If you write fiction, if you're writing a novel, if you like writing short stories or anything like that, and you're stuck with regard to the plot, or you're not really sure what kind of system and dynamics the characters are going to have, you're not really sure of the timeline, etc., you can use tarot to inspire you, to make you think about where you want your work of fiction to go. So the bardic technique is overall very useful, very inspiring, and it's a very dense, rich and complex way of looking at various tarot cards and understanding them in a new way. So what I would like you to do over the coming weeks is to practice with the bardic technique. I think that this is something that could really help your study and aid your study. So just for an example, I have my tarot deck here, my trusty tarot deck as always. And let's say that I want to just come up with a 3-card story, so a short story, using 3 random cards from the deck. So the cards that I've selected are the 5 of Pentacles, Judgment, and the 3 of Cups. Okay, so the story begins with the 5 of Pentacles, so we can say that, you know, it's a very dark, snowy night, it's very inhospitable out in the great big wide world, and there is a person or 2 people, and they feel destitute, they don't have a lot of money, they might be homeless. This might be a story about real poverty and difficulty for your character, for your protagonist, and they could be ill, they could feel unwell, they might be lost, they might be trying to find their way to somewhere where there's warmth and shelter and light. And Judgment comes along. Now, for me, in my mind, I would choose, if I was writing a work of fiction, to see Judgment as death. That's what I would like to do. I would like to take the character through the experience of death, from this poverty and destitution that they're in. Maybe they were hungry, maybe they were too cold. So what I would like to do is take them through the process of bodily death, and I would like them to realise that they are then not dead, and that everything is kind of just different than they ever expected it to be. So my story would go on to become about what happens after this character dies. And the 3 of Cups could be something to do with them reuniting with somebody that they knew who'd already passed over to the other side, and it could be about that reunion, and that could be how the story could slowly unfold. So this is just a very basic example of the bardic technique and what it actually entails. And as you can see, it could go absolutely anywhere. You're literally drawing cards at random and allowing the cards to help you to tap into your imaginative faculties. So I think it's a very exciting exercise, and I think that as you start to unravel your relationship with things like the bardic technique, you can realise that you can really push your limitations with tarot. You can push your boundaries, and you really can go anywhere with it. So if that's something that you'd be interested in doing, do try it and let me know how you get on with the storytelling technique, with the bardic technique, because I do think it's something that has a great deal of benefit to it. As I said, you can use it for healing, you can use it to think about things in a more abstract way and really get to the bottom of that dense symbology that comes along when you write a story, but you can also just use it to write fiction if that's what floats your boat. I know that it floats mine, and I know that tarot has been helpful in some senses for that when I've been kind of stuck and I've been wondering what to do or where to go with my protagonist. So that's the bardic technique in a nutshell. I hope I've explained it well enough, and I hope it's something that you feel called to go on and use. Another technique which I think is quite useful with regard to taking a look at how abstract tarot can be, or how tarot can be associated with abstract things and used to unravel them, is using something like selecting a piece of art or reading a poem or listening to a song, and then using a tarot, doing a blind draw with tarot to kind of delve deeper into the meaning of that song or poem or piece of art. I think often when somebody comes to us for a tarot reading, we have very little to go on. We have some notes about the situation, we understand a little bit about what the querent's concerns are. From there we go on to using our deep intuitive insights. We really go with our gut and we use everything that we know about the cards and everything beyond what we know about the cards, and we spin something into being which is going to be as helpful as possible for that client. But in fact, we are not given everything. Our conscious mind is not given every piece of information to absorb. So we're really going with our intuition and we're untangling a lot of stuff that we don't know the long and short of most of the time. It's not like when you read the cards for yourself. Even in that case, you might not be entirely sure and clear about the situation because there might be certain parts of it that you're denying to yourself. So that's a whole different kettle of fish. But I do think it's interesting to note that sometimes we do tarot readings for people when we have very little information to go on, really, and it might kind of look a little bit like an abstract Polaroid, and we're trying to tie the cards and the advice and the guidance around this Polaroid. You know, it's almost like there's nothing behind it that we can consciously see. We're using intuition to dig down and dig down. So what I would suggest is reading a poem, or listening to a song, maybe a song that you're not familiar with. I think that would be a great place to start. Or taking a look at a piece of art. I have a couple of art books which are just filled with different photographs and paintings, different pieces of modern art, and installation art and things like that. And sometimes I look at that piece of art and I take a look at my initial reactions to it and what I feel is going on and what I feel might be the case. And then I really enjoy, just as an exercise of really expanding my abilities with tarot, I really enjoy doing a blind draw of about 3 cards, which I then associate with that artwork. And I really let the messages come out of me. And I start viewing the piece of art or the poem or whatever it is, I start viewing it in a different way. I'm adding layers of meaning to it. Certain cards will come up and I'll think, well, that's not really got anything to do with what the song lyrics are, but I'm going to try and sort of weave it into, I'm going to find some place where it fits into the art that I'm looking at or appreciating. And it works. It really works. It makes you really peel back layers upon layers, and it makes you see things in a completely new and different way. So that's kind of following on, I suppose, from the main idea with the bardic technique, which is to use tarot to weave symbology into something and actually give us more of a rich experience with regard to our own growth. We can take that and we can really go anywhere with it. We can take a look at a piece of art or a piece of writing, assess our initial impressions of it, and then use tarot to help us go deeper. You know, we can think about, for example, when you have a client come to you or somebody comes to you for a reading and you have that worry that you're going to be stuck, you have that concern that you're going to turn the cards over and you're going to be like, I have completely drawn a blank, I don't know what to say. You worry that your intuition won't have time to catch up with what's on the cards, or you worry that the cards aren't going to make sense. But of course you need to come out and say something. Now, of course, it's not ethically wrong to ask to refrain from doing the reading because you're not 100% sure what the interpretation is. That's fine if that's what you feel called to do. However, most of the time when we draw cards for somebody and we turn those cards over, we want to push ahead with the reading. We want to say something. We want to give our interpretation. And sometimes we worry that it might be a little bit sticky or that things might come up a bit blank. So I think that doing something like using tarot to delve into a piece of artwork is very useful because we're pushing ourselves to do something that's really quite abstract. You know, you get those points where you turn the cards over and you think, I'm not really sure what's going on here, but I'm going to have to try and press forward and I'm going to let my intuition come to me and absorb into me like a sponge as quickly as it gets here. because at the moment I'm kind of unsure, but I know if I put one foot in front of the other, things will come to fruition. I think that's very similar to doing a tarot reading which is based around a poem or based around a song or based around a piece of art. It's that conscious pushing. We are pushing ourselves forward. We've got these cards in front of us and we're having to kind of associate them with something quite abstract, and we're pushing ourselves to do that. So I think that's a really marvellous exercise to do. I think that's something that could be very helpful to you and actually push you right on into the next phase of your tarot evolution, if you like. Let me talk briefly about your connection to each card individually. I've often told people that I think it's a very good idea to spend quality time with each tarot card. I think that daily draws and things like that can be very useful, but I think sometimes it's a really good call to spend a good 7 full days with one of your tarot cards. Sorry, I'm just having a quick look at my notes to make sure there's nothing I've forgotten. No, there isn't. Okay, what I would suggest you do is start with the major arcana for this. Because I feel that particularly the major arcana has lots of archetypes in, and we're delving into that element of spirit, so I think there's a lot of stuff that can come to the table. So particularly if you're not as far in your tarot journey as perhaps some other people watching this, if you feel like the major arcana might be a more useful place to start, then go from there. What I would suggest you do is just select a card, either at random or consciously, and spend a week just focusing on that card. Put that card aside, or if it's a working deck, just write the name of the card down. And then every single day, try journaling about that card. Or every single day, look at that card before you go out into the world and do whatever it is you've got to do. And you'll start formulating a stronger bond with that card. You'll look at the themes of this card and the definitions for it and what it actually entails and means. And you'll notice that the little things that happen in your life and the events that unfold in your life have correlation with that card. And I'm not talking about things synchronistically falling into place here necessarily. I'm just talking about the fact that when you pull one card out and you actually put a microscope over that card, you zoom in to that card specifically and start to try and have a stronger working relationship with it, a lot of stuff will come into being that you'll just look at and think, okay, that has an association with the card that I'm actually working with at the moment, because the card kind of is on your mind more and more. It's like how they say that whatever you focus on often becomes what you dream about, or wherever you are becomes kind of the location and setting for your dreams. It's a similar thing. You'll get the themes and the meanings of the card more into your mind, and as a result, they will permeate into the outer world. And as a result of that, you're going to be given so many more lessons and life experiences which you can directly inject into that card. Once you've spent a week with the world, then you will notice that all of these things that come up in your life, which are to do, for example, with accomplishment and ending, which are to do with people understanding what their abilities are and how to put them forth into the world, which are to do with the fact that you kind of know a lot, but you also know nothing at all of these things that are associated with the world card, if you are working with the world card for a solid week, you will find all of these little nooks and crannies of your life and everybody else's, which the world has something to speak of. The world actually speaks about those things. So I would definitely recommend spending a week with each card and journaling for that full week with that card, really writing about the experiences that are coming into your life or going on in your life that you feel relate to that card, and also journaling every day about what your fresh perception is of that card. Once you've gotten to the 4th or 5th day, you'll realise that the journey has brought you an incredibly long way from where you were at the beginning with each card. That is for sure. Because you really pull open so many more doorways and so many more avenues when you remove one card from the rest of the deck and give it quality time. That's what we're really looking for here with this exercise, that you give each card quality time to actually make its deep impression upon you. And as you do that, the bond with each card will become so much stronger. So it really is a very worthwhile exercise, and let me know how you do get on with that one. A lot of people talk about perceived negative cards, and in fact, if you go back to the very beginning of the Four Queens YouTube channel, the first 2 videos that I made were about cards that are perceived to be negative and how you can look at those cards with negative connotations and actually see the positives in them. I really believe 100% that there is no card in the deck that's 100% positive or negative. I just said 100% twice in one sentence. It might be time for some cream soda. Look what I bought myself for when I finish. It's a little gift for myself. Okay, So I believe that there are no positive or negative cards. Everything has that light side and that shadow side, and without one side, the other side couldn't exist or be as potent. That is my teaching. That's when I teach tarot, that's what I'm teaching people. But of course, there are going to be cards that are more foreboding than others, and there are going to be cards that are going to look more light and happy and kind of more enjoyable to look at, easier on the eye, if you like. There are going to be some that look quite difficult and burdensome, like for example the Ten of Wands. I think a lot of people would look at that and think, oh god, there's a lot of hard work coming my way, it looks like there's a lot of struggle coming my way. But of course there is a light side to that card. The Ten of Swords, the same. It looks like a murder scene, let's face it. I mean, it's quite unsettling for those of us who, you know, don't have an understanding of what it means out there. Whereas, for example, let's just take a quick look at an overwhelmingly positive card. This card, the Ace of Pentacles, it looks like an offering, it looks like an exciting gift, maybe a business venture, there's a beautiful garden in the background, it looks like something is being handed to us. So this, from the outside perspective, could have a very positive connotation. The unfortunate thing with tarot reading is that a lot of people who actually pick up a deck and start working with a deck actually remain in that very kind of narrow place of thinking of these cards as having a perceived positive or negative vibe to them. And there's no kind of understanding of the fact that there are two sides to each coin, if you like. So what I really want to talk about now is the shadow self. Now, I do some videos on my channel about shadow work, and I'm a huge proponent of shadow work for purposes of healing and personal development. Shadow work obviously is where you take a look at the parts in your psyche that are repressed, that you're ashamed of, that you don't want to think about, that make you feel inadequate or small or unable. And you really bring those things to the surface and place focus on them in order to integrate them into your whole being, to love yourself despite your perceived flaws, and to understand that all of the sides of you should have the same merit. And once you understand the shadow side, once you've accepted the shadow side, it ceases to be able to control you. You're not as fearful of it. So that's the whole kind of idea with shadow work for personal development. What I want you to do is, without encouraging you actively to do shadow work, because if you're not ready and you're not at a stage in your journey where that's appropriate for you, then I would not presume to push it upon you. However, just for the sake of doing a little shadow work exercise for me right now for this workshop, I'd like you to think about one word that sums up one aspect of your shadow self. What is that one thing that's part of your character that you really wish that you could get rid of, or that you think has been nothing but trouble for you? Maybe it's something that you're embarrassed by. You don't need to pick a word. You can branch out if you want. You can write down a sentence or think of a sentence that really encapsulates a part of your shadow side that you know is a part of your shadow side. It's not fully integrated into your psyche because you kind of swallow it down, you repress it, you kind of wish it wasn't there, and you feel ashamed of it or embarrassed by it. I want you to think about that little aspect of your shadow side, and then I want you to use a tarot card to describe it. I want you to go through your deck and pick out a card, maybe on the merit of the picture alone, or maybe on the merit of what you know about it, and choose that card to actually represent that part of your shadow aspect. Now, once you've taken that card and had a look at it and kind of associated it with that part of your shadow aspect that you're uncomfortable with, I want you to write down every good thing, every positive thing, every overwhelmingly nutritious and delicious and nourishing and nurturing thing about that card. I want you to write a page of A4 just purely praising that card, just writing about how it could make somebody feel positive, how it could encourage somebody to change things, how it could encourage somebody to love themselves, how when it comes along it's almost like a lesson is being offered to you. I want you to write everything positive about the card that you can possibly think of. And if you are one of those people who really believes, you know, that there are some cards that have 100% negative connotation, there are some cards that are just 100% doom and gloom, come to me and I will give you at least 10 reasons why the card that you perceive to be negative is also incredibly positive and incredibly nurturing and gives you an incredible amount to work on and to feel satisfied and happy with. I feel like every card, of course, has those dark and light sides, and that's what makes them so nutritious, and that's what enables them to enable us to grow so much, because there's no bullshit with tarot. There really isn't. You know, the tool is a direct reflection of human experience, and we are so complex as human beings. There is no way that we are black or white. We are 100 shades of grey. in our moral standpoints, in our ethics, and in our core values, in our pasts and our connections to our past, in our bad habits, with the way society regards us, with the way that we regard each other. Everything about us is so complex. There is no black and white. There's nothing monochrome about it. And nobody should judge somebody as such. Nobody should judge somebody as good or bad. I think it's fair to say that most people who read tarot for personal development or to help people heal or to guide people understand that the human psyche is way more complex than that. And if tarot is a reflection of the human psyche and the human experience, then tarot must be more complex than that also. That is my theory, and I'm sticking with it. So yeah, I would like you to try and use cards, one card at first, but if you enjoy this exercise and you get something out of it, by all means keep going. Use a card to describe a part of your shadow aspect, and then write a little mini essay on all of the reasons why that card could be beneficial, why that card is nourishing, why that card is positive. Because then you have to see that the parts of your shadow self that you're repressing, or the parts of your shadow self or your psyche, that you are not 100% happy with, have their positives too. They are ways for you to learn, and they are part of who you are. And, you know, they reflect just as much what you are and where you've been and what you've learned as the light side. It's just a case of not allowing the shadow side to have power by repressing it, by considering it to be bad, by trying to kick it away under the bed where we can't get to it, and where we can't really have a decent relationship with those parts of ourselves that we would perceive to be in shadow. So I think that's going to be an exercise that a few people are going to feel is useful. Moving on from what I was saying about spending quality time with each card, because I think this is something that is very important for anybody going into the intermediate or advanced stages, is we really need to start focusing on each card single, without the whole of the deck. Of course, it's useful to work with the deck. It's a holistic tool. The 78 cards would be absolutely broken and empty if one of them was taken away. It is a working, integrated system. So of course, it's very important to do lots of work with the whole deck. However, when we get to that stage in our tarot progression where we really feel that we need to deepen our relationship with the structure and definition of each individual card, then of course quality time with each individual card is wholly necessary. So as well as doing this exercise that I proposed earlier, whereby you spend 7 days with each of your tarot cards, starting with the majors, I also think it would be a good idea to go through each of your tarot cards individually and do spider diagrams. I think this is a really, really good one. I did one earlier so that I could give you a little example. Okay, here's my spider diagram of the Emperor card. And it can be a lot more complex than that and a lot more in depth, but I wanted to do it in quite big lettering so that you can see what I mean. Basically, you're starting with the card in the centre and you're allowing yourself to branch out. And just branch out and branch out. Go for an automatic writing kind of vibe where you can't really stop, and maybe train yourself to go for about 15 minutes per card or 20 minutes per card without stopping. Just writing down your impressions of the different things within the fabric of the meaning of the card which relate to your own life and which relate to your own psyche. So for example, with the Emperor, the first thing that I wrote was to do with my domineering father and the relationship that I have with my father, and then I also went on to write about other male templates and male role models in my childhood, because that's a big part of what I think of when I see the Emperor. So you'll always begin with the most obvious things. You'll begin with the things that are most surface for you and that come up for you personally when you see that card. I also wrote about power struggles and dealing with authority, which makes it difficult for me to feel like I'm part of an integrated workforce, which kind of feeds into my desire to at some point have my own business or my own way of making money, so that I can have autonomy. So it kind of went off into that kind of area as well. I wrote about freeing myself from negative people and negative influences, from people who may seek to be disciplinarian over me or discourage me. And then I wrote about controlling and also about wanting control. I wrote about self-control, my self-control, both good and bad. I wrote about my self-discipline, my choice of male partners, the ideas of alpha and beta males, that kind of thing. My masculine energy overload, which if you've gotten to know me over the past 10 months of me being on YouTube, you will know I do have a little bit of one. Proud and unapologetic. This is another kind of thing that I think of when I'm tapping into that Emperor energy. I see him as strong in the earth. I see him as feeling like he has to make no apology for the way he is or for what he wants. And I think that's a big part of me too. So as you go on and on with these spider diagrams and brainstorming and things like that on each individual card, you will start to actually peel the layers away and things will get more specific. And you will realise that when you push yourself to extend your knowledge and when you push yourself to really extend your understanding of each card on an individual basis, stuff will come up for you that you did not realise had anything to do with that card for you. You will start writing and you'll start writing and you'll force yourself not to put the pen down so you can really get down to other concerns. And by the end of the exercise, you'll be really surprised at the kind of content that's come up for you that you would actually attribute to and associate with that card, because you're rolling all the time. You're rolling out the ideas. So you'll come out with the most obvious thing first, but then after a while you'll be like, okay, I'm moving into more obscure territory, or I'm moving into things that of course definitely have something to do with this card, but it's been a bit of a strangled labyrinthine route up towards those things. They're not things that came easily for me. They're not things that I would have initially associated overwhelmingly with that card, but yet here I am 20 minutes into this writing exercise, really getting to grips with the fact that, you know, the Emperor reminds me of XYZ thing or taps into this thing or that thing that I really wouldn't have attributed it to. And this is what starts to make you a really bloody good tarot reader. And I can tell you that for a fact. Your bond with each individual card in the deck is paramount to your ability to be able to use the full range of the definitions and interpretations you've got. As you expand more in terms of reading books and watching these workshops and lessons and listening to other people's definitions and such, yes, of course, you will flourish. But there is nothing better, I don't think, than really getting into contact with your psyche's perception and your psyche's reaction to each individual card. We're talking about really, really pulling one card out of the deck here and going to town with it and not stepping back, really forcing yourself to go through the motions in this exercise and taking a look at where it takes you. You know, you need to look at the great underneath. Your psyche is an absolute epic and intricate mishmash of universal symbology and the collective unconscious, all of your memories, your past, present, future, your fears, your hopes, your dreams. Your psyche is as complex and as beautiful and as maddening and as magical as the psyche of any client that you come across who would like you to read their cards for them. So it's really important that you understand that your bond with your deck is paramount. You can't expect anyone else to bond with your deck and with the interpretations that you put forward if your relationship with tarot is a little bit stale, and if your relationship with tarot is not alive. So I would really recommend in the coming weeks doing these spider diagrams and just seeing where they go. And remember to try and keep that free writing vibe happening, that automatic writing vibe where, you know, you really do push your own boundary. You don't put the pen down as soon as you're done with the first few things. You keep going, keep pushing yourself, keep making those connections. And some of the connections will be obscure and some of them will be really obvious. Just keep going like this with these lines. Keep branching out and branching out. Try and put arrows towards the next thing you thought of and then the next thing you thought of, so that when you look back over the exercise, you can see your workings. You can see how one perception led to another perception, which led you onto a memory, which led you onto something else. And you'll be able to stand back and think, wow, that was a really big process of connection, connecting the dots and really getting to grips with my relationship with this card. And you'll really feel after that, you know, that your relationship with the individual card is so much stronger. In fact, exercises like this get quite addictive because once you've done 10 or 15 cards, you really feel like those 10 or 15 cards start to mean something different, start to mean something more significant, more important, more potent. And then after that, you can't stop because you're like, well, I need to do the others. I need to do all 78, otherwise it's incomplete. So it is one of those exercises, if you get into it and you find that it really flicks your switch, you will definitely be up all night doing it. Or you will schedule time, you know, whenever your tarot study time is or whenever you have free time. This is one of those exercises that gets addictive quite quickly because it is just so revealing. That's the word I would use for an exercise like that. It's so unbelievably revealing. Every card in the deck has a piece of advice. At least one, at least 10, at least 20 pieces of advice. What I want you to do is, without thinking, kind of like just freely. Be freewheeling here, be spontaneous, take a risk. Don't look at your books, don't look back in your tarot journal, don't stop and think about something that I might have said or something that some other tarot geek might have said while they were geeking out about tarot. Don't think about any of that. Just go through your deck and quickly write down, like give yourself 20 seconds, 30 seconds for each card. Quickly write down or type up one sentence of advice that fits in with that card. And I want you to do this quickly, because a lot of the time with tarot, when we get to a certain stage where we know that we have quite a lot of knowledge about the definitions of each card and we've really put the time in, when it comes to something that you have to come up with in a flash, you sometimes feel a little bit nervous and on edge because you're thinking, okay, no, I know that I have a lot of knowledge on this. I need to write the right thing. I need to write something that absolutely encapsulates it. I need to prove to myself that, you know, my knowledge is as strong as I think it is. Let's just put all of that out the window. And let's really think about your instant spontaneous reaction to each card with regard to the advice that comes up. And some of the stuff that you write might be revealing, and some of the stuff that you write might be really arbitrary and you might be disappointed with it. But as you do it more and more, you'll come to the understanding that the advice that tarot has to give is absolutely untapped potential. In fact, another exercise that you could try is, as you're going through your deck, quickly, and writing in 30 seconds a key piece of advice from each card that you would give to a querent. Try doing 3 key pieces of advice too. Try that exercise where it's almost like you're doing 3 interpretations. So just for an example, I'm not going to be able to do it in 30 seconds because otherwise it would just be sloppy. But, you know, this is the kind of thing that I do. I really go from my gut. I try and put away all the information that I know and just quickly write something, the first thing that comes into my head that's a key piece of advice. So, for example, the Queen of Swords, key piece of advice, be true to yourself and speak authentically from your mouth. That would be the thing that would come into my head first of all. Page of Cups, don't be afraid to branch out beyond your society. See, you have to come up with it quick. You have to come up with it so quick. Okay. It's the Sun. Consciousness expands all the time. Make sure your outer life expands with it. Okay, so basically you just keep going and you have to make it quick. You have to make it snappy. Don't give yourself too long. And don't worry about getting it wrong because it's just an exercise between you, tarot, and the walls, you know. But it really makes you think on your feet. And I think it's interesting to see what comes out sometimes. In fact, I can't remember what I just said about those 3 cards, but I might watch this section back later because I found that actually quite interesting to do. Sometimes we just allow ourselves to really overthink. We write down, for example, a vast amount of definitions for cards. I still compare definitions from one book to another or from one blog to another, and I really find that that keeps me on my toes and it gets me thinking outside the box. I really don't want my definitions to become stale when it comes to tarot, so I do the work to really delve into different people's ideas and different people's definitions, and that's what keeps it fresh for me. But I also think that there's a real danger with that kind of thing. It can become a little bit toxic and a little bit unhelpful because we're reading all of these fantastic definitions and we're really delving into all of these incredible thoughts that people have about different tarot cards. And suddenly we're thinking to ourselves, I need to keep all of this in my head. That's a perfect sentence to describe that card. I need to keep that in my head. Oh my God, how am I going to keep all 3 of those definitions in my head? How am I going to keep that perfect idea of the sun that I have in my head? If you try and do that kind of thing, you're going to sound like a parrot anyway, so it's not going to end up being a decent tarot reading that you're giving, or it's not going to be a revealing and pure tarot reading that you're giving to yourself. Because if you're just trying to regurgitate definitions that you felt were very impressive and that you felt really spoke to you, you're just regurgitating them, but are you really absorbing them? Are you really feeling them? Are they really coming from a pure place? And of course, when we look into different definitions and when we look into different areas of thought that tarot enthusiasts come up with, particularly with regard to the meanings for each card, we're also reminded constantly that there is no one right answer. You know, they're pure and simple, just isn't one right answer. That's why tarot is so enjoyable and why so many of us feel such a connection to it, because it really is about our connection with our intuition. It's about us positing our psyche into the deck. That's why so many people have key tarot readers that they favour. because their psyche and what they bring to the table is important for that client. It's important over what somebody else brings to the table. You get your tried and tested, trusted advisors with tarot, and you go back to them time and time over because there's something about their specific psyche and their specific perception which they bring to the table which really kind of ties in with what a client wants and needs at that time. So, we are reminded constantly that there are so many different definitions, but we can get bogged down in trying to remember them all or trying to make sure, that we always give out that key sentence that we feel really sums up a certain card. In reality, get rid of that key sentence that you're trying to remember. That's just weighing you down. The real magic is to be able to just flip through the deck and just go for a piece of advice. Of course, this is not meant to reflect the way you read for people. You should take your time when you read for people. You should absorb. You should turn the cards over and really breathe in their messages and let your intuition come to you. But it's always very important to know that you can, in a split second, take one portion of your understanding of a card and then a split second take another and another and another. Just keep that information going. Keep it flooding out of you during this exercise. It's quite exciting. It's quite fast-paced, and it really can make you feel quite tired afterwards. But try it, and see how you go with it. I often feel that sometimes when we are trying to strip our tarot study back to the basics and trying to think of new ways to really connect with the cards and interpret them, it's really useful to use words, just one word. Go through the dictionary or the thesaurus, or just look around at your bookshelf and pick out a word. I like to use the oracle cards that I have. I sometimes use them for blogging as well if I'm kind of stuck. If I know that I want to blog, I want to write and connect and kind of put something out there, but I'm not really sure whether or not I've settled on a subject, I'll go through my oracle cards, and my oracle cards usually will give me a great little idea of something that I can write about. I feel that this is really useful for tarot study, so I'm going to start you off with a word. I'm going to choose the word compromise for this particular tarot workshop. So write down the word compromise, and then I want you to go through your deck at a time of your choosing when you really have kind of the time and the resource to do it. Go through your deck and think about all of the cards in your deck that have something to do with compromise, all of the cards that immediately speak to you very loudly about compromise, and then also going through some of the ones that you maybe wouldn't have expected. Perhaps go through every card in the deck and try to think about how every card in the deck might have a relationship to the word compromise. I really want you to go to town with this exercise. Don't let go of that word. Stick with that word and really think about every way that it's possible to look for the different signs about compromise, the lessons with regard to compromise that come up in the tarot deck, and really enjoy that process. And you can do it with other things too. For example, you could try the word transformation. That's a really good one. Or you could try the word resistance or the word allowance. Try these word exercises and really enjoy going through the deck and looking at your different emotional responses and associations that you formed with each card. I love doing that. That is one of my all-time favourite tarot exercises. It's something that I enjoy doing so much because I'm really challenging myself and I'm pushing my own boundaries there. And that's something that it's important for me to be able to do at the kind of stage that I'm at now, because at the kind of stage that I'm at now is where I think there's the biggest potential to go stale. There is the biggest potential to just stop dead, to get self-satisfied or to think, okay, I'm done with that now. There are lots of areas of tarot in which I'm not necessarily proficient, and they're the places that I really want to push myself in the next couple of years, particularly with regard to stuff like the Kabbalistic technique and the Tree of Life. This is something that I know very little about. My knowledge is truly arbitrary, so I'm really excited to branch out in terms of that. But in terms of tarot for self-development, which is where I feel my level of expertise is, my area of expertise is, I'm really in a lot of ways sitting pretty, and I think that it would be incredibly dangerous for me to stop thinking of myself as a seeker at this point, because I don't want to wake up in 10 years and think, oh shit, I really wish I'd carried on with that every day, and I really wish I'd kept my passion for it, instead of feeling so ridiculously complacent, thinking that there was nothing else that I needed to learn. There's always more to learn, and I'm always at the beginning, and that's how I've kind of kept it fresh for me. And one of the biggest exercises that's really helped me is this one word exercise. It really is. Love might be another one you might want to choose. Love's a big overwhelming one to go through with those 78 cards, but I think that it would be very useful. So go with compromise first of all, because I think there's always a little bit of emotional resistance when the teacher gives you the word to go with instead of you just using your own initiative. So, you know, be uncomfortable with that, go through that resistance, write down the word compromise, and just get your deck out. You know, just put it on the floor in front of you. I really think that sometimes we're too precious with our decks in a sense, not in terms of caring for them, of course, you should care for them, or they'll be battered and crunchy and yucky and they'll have juice all over them. But I don't think enough people actually spend enough time with their entire tarot deck on the floor. You know, where you just get it all out, all over the rug, all over the carpet, just spread it out. You could spread it out from the full right down to the last of the minors, or you could just spread it out as it comes. You could just leave your reversals in if you read with reversals, and just do it one at a time as it comes, 10, 10, or 15, 15, in lines all the way. And then just stand back and survey the empire that you've just created. Just get lost in it, you know, just enjoy meditating on it. Just enjoy your ruminations, your contemplations. I think that we don't do that enough. And I think that tarot is such a vast tool with, as I said, so much untapped potential. I think that it's really important to sometimes just get the whole bloody deck out and just have a look at it. And you don't necessarily need to have a specific intention. Just get it out and just go with the first thing that you think of. Just take a look. Maybe use it like that mandala exercise that I taught you guys a while ago on the channel, where I talked about how there doesn't need to be any specific starting point. You just go gently, slip into the meditative state and just enjoy getting lost amid the cards and amid their symbols and amid your own unfolding thoughts as they come into your mind. It's so delicious. You can't deny it. Okay, so yeah, I'm really glad that I mentioned that thing about getting all your tarot cards out on the floor, because I do think people don't do that enough. You can sit in the midst of them as well. You don't have to kind of lay them out and then sit there in front of them. You can actually sort of organise them around you if you want, and do a meditation inside them, or you know, even do kind of like a path working, which involves every single card in the spread, if you like, just see where that goes. I think this kind of thing is very expansive, and I think that's what the tarot journey is about with regard to learning. It's about being expansive. Take a look for a little while at what the words going beyond means for you in your tarot learning, because at the beginning of this lesson I asked you to think about your intentions, really set your goals with the tarot experience. Think about your short-term goals, your long-term goals, your goals for this Soul Tarot workshop, your goals as a reader for others, your goals as a seeker and a reader for yourself. And I think that looking at your intentions and setting your intentions, actually focusing on your aims, can give you a lot of revitalisation and rejuvenation when you need it, especially when you've entered one of those sticky phases of the tarot journey, where it's a little bit like wading through treacle and you're wondering if you're ever going to get to the bloody end. Those phases in the learning where it feels like a little bit more of a trough than a peak, they can be difficult. So sometimes when you look at your intentions, it's like refreshing your head. It's like thinking, okay, look, just stop, strip back to simplicity. I want my tarot time, I want my journal, and this is where I'm headed. This is the direction I'm going in. That's what I want for myself. I think that can be really useful. Have a look for a little while at what you imagine going beyond in tarot is, and it could mean a few different things. For me, in my tarot journey, I really feel that I started going beyond when... It's difficult to pin it down to a specific time, but I would say I started going beyond firstly at the moment where I started doing some serious book study, where I started to get truly academic and to delve into all of these different definitions that people were writing about, that kind of thing. Now, I don't think it's anywhere near on the book study that some people's book study has been. I definitely don't. I think other people have done a lot more than me and are a lot more dedicated to that side of it than I am. But I feel that for the time in my life where I was, and the way that the tarot passion just overtook me once again out of nowhere, I hadn't picked up a deck for about 2 years, and you know, the time before that big spurt of book study, whenever I picked up a deck, it would be like I would have an understanding of the definitions and I'd be able to give a reading, but I don't think I was plugged in. I don't think I was truly plugged in to the cards and to my emotional response to them from my psyche. I don't feel that I really put forth the kind of readings for the people that came to me as I can do and will continue to do now. And the second big point of going beyond, I feel, was when I started doing my path working, and I really started to go into each card. I actually entered into each card. Somebody asked me the other day where they could find some materials on pathworking with tarot, but actually since doing the trainee tarot course, I've actually forgotten what the resource is that I would have offered. I think it was, I know that there are a couple of fantastic threads about pathworking on the Eclectic Tarot forum. And it's something that does come up on Eclectic Tarot. In fact, if you are a serious tarot student, which at nearly 50 minutes of watching this, if you're not a serious tarot student, then you must just fancy me, because I am talking about tarot a lot right now. If you're a serious tarot student and you're not on Eclectic Tarot, get onto Eclectic Tarot, do yourself a favour. Even if you just lurk and you don't reply to anything or respond to anything, get onto Eclectic Tarot. It's such a decent resource, it really is. So yeah, I do feel that there were two specific phases during which I went beyond. I went beyond, first of all, when I really humbled myself, got myself down to the baseline and decided, I don't know anything about this. Yes, I can do a spread for somebody. Yes, I understand roughly what the cards mean. But that doesn't equate with the kind of knowledge that I'm looking for. So it was about really realising that and understanding that. That was when I pushed forward. When I truly went beyond is when I was doing my path working, I was doing my meditations, I was doing my spider diagrams like the one I've showed you in this video. I was really trying to connect each tarot card and each message in each tarot card to me. I was thinking about my personal emotional responses. That was when I really pushed beyond. And when you look at the ways in which you want to push beyond, no matter what stage you're at this point in your learning, when you think about how you wish to push beyond, and beyond for me is like that stage that you never thought you'd get to. After I did all of that book study and I started doing my path working and I really started thinking about tarot on a whole new different level, I started relating it to things in my life and people in my life and things that had happened. I realised that I'd pushed beyond a place I never thought I'd actually get to. I never realised that I'd get to that stage. I never realised that my passion would actually interpret itself and weave itself into my life in such a specific and such a useful and harmonious way. When you think about where you want to be in terms of getting beyond, what does that look like for you? In your mind's eye, how do you visualise it? Is it just about having such an intense and intrinsic connection to each card that you would never ever draw a blank again if you turn them over? Is that what it means for you to go beyond? Is that point in space and time that you really feel, if I get there, then anything else is a bonus? That's what I want for myself with tarot. Is going beyond about being paid to do readings at events or private parties? Do you feel like if you've got that level of confidence and that level of prestige, then your desire to help people and teach people will have been utilised in the tangible world? Do you feel that going beyond is about really being able to meditate and path work with tarot to the point where you actually lose yourself in that world, as though you're astral projecting into that world that is portrayed for you in your deck, and you really start to have a full-on relationship with these people and these places in your deck? What does going beyond really look like for you? There could be a million and one things, I guess, but I think that it's something that's very beautiful and enchanting to think about in terms of our own journey. And yes, you need a lot of radical acceptance when you're learning a tool like tarot. You need to understand where you are in the here and now in order to understand where you really want to go. That's true of everything in life, I think. I don't think you can have a decent starting point and a strong foundation for where you want to get to unless you're truly willing to accept and get down with where you are right now. So, of course, I do think it's important on a day-by-day basis to just check in and let the tarot experience unfold and say to yourself, yes, I'm a student, I'm forgetting definitions, or I'm not able to do spreads that are over 5 cards, or I'm kind of thinking about doing this, but I'm a bit nervous about it because it seems like such a mammoth task, this next phase of the learning, whatever it is. I think it's important to be realistic about where you are right now, but I also think that idea of going beyond can be very motivating, and there could be a lot to be said for thinking about how you want to go beyond. And finally, how has tarot changed your outlook? How has it changed your perspective? And does it continue to change your outlook and change your perspective? When we think about change with regard to the beliefs that we hold, with regard to the way we see ourselves or see each other or treat each other, with regard to the decisions that we make in our lives, when we think about beneficial change, powerful change, potent and poignant change, we think about tarot as a tool that can really help us to tap into that if we are looking for it. If we are genuinely seeking with tarot, if you're a true seeker, and you're doing a reading for yourself, and you're really asking yourself these beneficial questions like, what do I need to know about my connection to my own future? What do I need to know about my fears? How can I utilize my signature strengths out there in the world? These are the kinds of questions that are useful, okay? Not like, when am I going to meet a tall, dark, handsome stranger and be whisked off my feet and never have to think about taking accountability ever again? If those questions are the kind of thing that move you to use tarot, I think that's absolutely fine. I think it can be used for a whole myriad of reasons. But for me, that is like dropping anchor before you've even gotten out to sea the unbelievably all-encompassing, expansive, heart-searching questions that you could ask that tool, and you can really work with it and you can really get to finding the answers. Don't drop anchor before you've gone out into the ocean of tarot and really, really tasted what it has to offer, because it's so much bigger than just finding out when you're going to get married. Trust me on that. It's really about going for a swim in your own soul. That's what it's about. It's diving into the psyche and finding out how long you can stay under before you go up for air. So when we think about the incredible changes that tarot can really help us to put into being, think about how it's changed you. How has it changed your perspective? Not only in terms of, how you view yourself with the tool. I'm talking about like which cards or which spreads that you've done for yourself or which lessons that you've had have really changed the way you feel about your connection to anything in life. Your pain, your fear, your connection to your past, your passion, your tenacity, your desire to really do something, your perceptions about other people, your perceptions about your place in the world, your perceptions about what you're capable of. I'd love to know, and I'd love for you to know, what tarot has given to you as a gift. And if you do read for other people, or you're planning on reading for other people, what is it that you would most like to give to a client that comes to you for a reading? What is it that you most want them to feel? How is it that you most want them to react to the reading in terms of changes they make, in terms of shifts to their perspective? How do you want them to feel when they leave the room? Regardless of how they came in, regardless of what their worries or concerns are, regardless of what their areas of focus are, how do you want them to feel when they leave one of your tarot readings? What's the ideal emotional response that you want them to have? What do you want to give to them? Because doing a tarot reading is about giving, whether there's an exchange of monetary energy or not, I don't care. It's about giving. It's about giving of yourself. And it's about really allowing your potent connection with the cards to help somebody else as much as possible. So what do you want to give them? Do you want to give them the answer to their question? Or do you want to help them to understand that the answer is within? Do you want to empower them? Do you want to make them feel safe, protected, nurtured, listened to, cared for? Do you want to advocate them and push them forward? Do you want to inspire them? Do you want them to give them a little bit of a cosmic kick up the arse and say, look, this is who you really are and this is what you really need to put out into the world? Do you want to show somebody their potential? Do you want to heal somebody from the hurt that's been done to them in the past? Do you want to be the one to help them to dredge up some of the issues that they're going through? And remember to always think about ethics and always think about boundaries too, because these things are important. In fact, grab your tarot journal and write boundaries on one page and ethics on the other page to really think about where your boundaries are as a reader and where their boundaries are as a seeker, as a client, as a querent. And think about the ethics that you always want to put into place and employ so that your client is safe and so are you. So that you don't overstep any mark, and so that you don't go outside of your remit as a helper, as a tarot reader, as a counsellor, as a medium, as a psychic, as a witch, whatever moniker you fall under, whatever reasons why you're doing tarot, always make sure that you have your ethics on hand and that you have actually thought about the ethics that you wish to employ. I think that's so important when you're reading for other people. I think it's important to understand where you draw your own line. And just to understand what it is that you want to give the people that come to you, whether it's friends and family, whether it's clients, whether you're doing these events, whatever opportunity you have to read tarot. If you walk around with tarot in your bag, then you might have just randomly found yourself at a wine bar one night having a completely random conversation to somebody who never thought they'd want a tarot reading in their life. And you mention that you read tarot and they say, oh my God, have you got your cards? And then hey presto, something is happening. You are giving of your innate gifts. That is a moment in time that you could frame and stick under glass. How awesome is that? And so really have a strong connection to your ethics and your principles. Have a strong connection to the kind of reader that you are. If somebody was to come up to you and ask you right now what kind of reader you are, what kind of services you provide, what kind of thing you cater for, what your specialities are, there comes a point in your tarot journey, it might not be the point that you're at now, but there comes a point where that kind of thing needs to be explained in a nutshell, summed up in a nutshell, and it helps you feel more confident, you know, when you know what kind of reader you really are. When you understand what you want people to get out of your readings, it helps you to be more confident and to understand even more where you're going on this wonderful journey of your own with tarot. Okay guys, if you have any questions, leave them below. I will be back with another Soul Tarot workshop, I suppose, 3 to 4 weeks time, I guess. I'd like to leave it now until September to do the next one. But I am going to be recording a couple of live lessons, and I do also offer paid tuition. I'm going to be offering lots of other options like that. If there's anything that I haven't covered that you want me to cover, you can purchase an individual tarot lesson from me on the Etsy shop. It is very affordable. But of course also leave questions and comments below. If it's anything that I can sum up quickly, I will do that for you. But anything in depth, I am available for affordable tuition, and I will be back with lots more tarot content for you in the future because I bloody love it. Blessed be.